Okay, welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Monday, June 3rd Board of Education Instructional Committee meeting. I'll get right to business because we have quite a few things on the agenda tonight. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes dated May 6, 2019. Are there any corrections? Ms. Levesque?
Yes, I have some corrections. They're just of a clerical nature, so I will hand them into the clerk to have that done.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, let's start with Mr. Votto.
Yes.
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 And I'll abstain. I wasn't at that meeting. So minutes are approved with corrections. Thank you, Ms. Levesque.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is approval of a new high school Italian course.
Hi, everybody. We are proposing to take our existing Italian 4 course, which we've been running for a number of years, and modify it to be an AP course. We've spent a lot of time kind of looking at the progression that would need to happen in levels 1, 2, and 3 so that this could be an AP course by the time the students reach their 4th year of study. We've overlaid what the College Board is looking for in that AP course in terms of kind of the 4 things you look at in a language: the function, what tenses are students able to navigate through, the accuracy with which we're expecting our level 4s to be able to communicate and be understood, the different contexts that they can move through, and the text type. So can they participate in paragraph length discourse orally and in writing? And what we do in our level 4 really, aside from some themes that we would be looking to change, what we expect our students to be able to do with the language matches what the College Board expects the AP students to be able to do. And we're really excited at that. Latin was our first foray into an AP course for one of our languages that starts in high school. Spanish and French were an easier, more natural progression because we start those in middle school, so students are in their 6th year of study. But we're excited that what we've been able to do with the earlier levels of Italian has prepared our students for the possibility of earning this accolade in their 4th year of study.
Roxanne?
So I think you answered my question, but I want to make sure. So this goes in line with our other world language courses that the 4th year is an AP level.
That our final year is an AP level.
Okay,
Yep.
fair enough.
So for Italian and Latin, that's level 4. For French and Spanish, that's level 6.
Okay,
And
fair
ideally,
enough.
this is something we're looking to do in German in the near future as well.
Right, so it's consistent with the pattern that we're going.
Yes, that
That's-
your senior level course
Right.
would be
Right.
college credit bearing or college
Yeah.
caliber.
So down the road, we'll see that with German. So
Ideally,
again,
yes.
that ideally, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair, no
Yep.
pressure, but okay. So thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Ms. Purcell?
I think this is maybe for Carrie. There's a budget item in here for the 2 teachers in the Summer Institute.
Mhm.
Can I assume that every time there's a budget item in here, it's already in the budget and it's not something?
So this course wouldn't run next school year.
Okay.
This would be for the following school year.
Okay.
Right, so each year, as new staff are assigned to AP, we do send them for the AP training. Sometimes we know about it in advance, and then other times, we are fortunate to be able to still fund it through some creative finances. So this is ahead of the game, so Kim will budget for that in her World Language Conference line. You'll see that in the 2021 proposed budget.
All right, thanks.
No.
Ms. Levesque?
Yes, what is your anticipated course enrollment?
I would guess between 12 and 16. That's about the number that we have in level 4. We've seen a resurgence of students taking Italian. We actually run 6 sections of Italian at Lyman Hall, and we have over 100 students in that program. So we're definitely seeing, I'm not sure what it is, if it's new staff, if it's kind of fresh eyes on the curriculum. We rewrote the curriculum last year for levels 1, 2, and 3, and we'll be rewriting level 4 in line with the College Board's expectations for AP, hopefully. So we're seeing more students do this. And you saw Laura Bauer and Annie Tullo, our Italian teachers, present the exchange a few months back. When there's an exchange opportunity for the students, that's a really exciting thing too, and can sort of be a carrot to to want to keep going and learning that language.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Votto?
Yeah, I have a little concern going from level 3 into level 4 and it becoming an AP. Going by what you said, it's worked before in the past. However, what if a child really does not want to go and take an AP course?
So they have the opportunity to be in the course and not sit for the AP exam. But it is kind of like, we sort of already run these higher level courses that the seniors are exposed to with that maturity of all of those different pieces. So they sort of are de facto enrolled in an AP course right now, just when you look at what it is that we're expecting them to produce and what we're expecting them to comprehend. So whether or not they sit for the exam and then try to translate that credit into something that's worth something at the university level is their decision. But it being a level 4 honors course right now and the final course in our progression, it still already is an extremely rigorous course. We kind of just see this as giving credit where credit is due almost for the students who do want to sit for the exam and receive that accolade.
Well, can you promise me that if you have a number of students who will maybe want to stop because they hear it's AP, that you will tell them what you just told me?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm just concerned about that. I don't want to see a child stop.
Be scared away, essentially.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because the letters AP could scare some kids.
Right.
Or they might not want the extra load of work.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they're told for sure, it's the same amount of work really, and the big difference is whether you want to sit in for the test or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think that's important to know.
And that was actually Mrs. Bauer, that was one of her biggest fears. So once we actually sat down and looked at what it is that a syllabus looks like if you're going through the College Board, we realized this is really what we're doing. We'll have to change some themes. AP has 6 very prescribed themes for world language courses, but in terms of comprehension and comprehensibility and production, this is the level that our students are functioning at. So, but that's a really good point, and it's something that Laura Bauer was extremely conscious of and worried about. And I think it took a few hours of really kind of digging through it all and saying, we do this. So let's kind of,
All right.
let's give credit
That's
where
fine.
it's due.
Any other questions? Okay, so why don't we start, we're ready to approve. We'll start with Mr. Votto.
Yes.
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 And yes. Thank
Mr.
you.
Votto made a liar out of me. I thought you were gonna ask your favorite question.
I was gonna make a statement, but I decided not to.
Oh, man. Okay.
What's his
Italian,
favorite
but-
question?
Italian at the middle school. When are we gonna do it?
Oh, well.
That's what I
Are you gonna
thought.
report on that?
No.
No, what'd you bring it up for?
I know it's weird. I
Yeah,
just,
you could have skated away. I mean, really.
I bet Tony $5 and now
So you just lost.
I did. I shouldn't have said anything.
Well, now I'm gonna bother you every time I see you.
Regardless of whether we're talking about Italian or not. Our second agenda item, the Argentina exchange, we actually have to pull from the agenda at the last second. We found out on Friday that the school in Argentina that we were hoping to enter into a new partnership with isn't able to move forward with us. That doesn't, in my opinion, bode poorly at all for the future of this program. This is an individual and a group of individuals with whom I've worked 5 times and Wallingford has worked twice. And so I have complete faith in their ability to execute an incredible exchange that is to our standards, but we just found out on Friday afternoon that it won't be with this school. So there's no point kind of in moving forward with the proposal as is because there were some nuances that were very school specific. So we're hoping to have a new partner fleshed out in the next month or so and that this is something we'll be bringing to you as soon as we can.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the revised middle school PE curriculum units. Mr. Loomis?
So we've rewritten the middle school physical education units, and we really looked at this through the prism of transferable skills and concepts. What you won't see on there for unit titles, for example, is this is the basketball unit and this is the softball unit. At the middle school level, kids come in, they know what they like, they know what they don't like. We're really trying to work on skills that will transfer and apply to a lot of different activities, because the whole idea is to get kids motivated and inspired to find something that they enjoy. So game tactics, that will work with a team sport, or that could work with an individual activity. So these units really apply to many different activities. And we have a major emphasis also on fitness during this curriculum. So between the transferable skills and the fitness emphasis, the team is really excited about these new units. There was input from everybody at both schools, both middle schools, and the entire group had input on these units. So, yeah.
Questions? Ms. Purcell?
Yeah, I'm excited about the fitness units. My question is, I know we have heart rate monitors at DAG, and we're able to monitor students, you know, how hard they're working. But do we have that? Do we get the funding for them at Moran or not?
Not yet. I'm still trying to find out grants and search out for grants for that. Continue to get a few handouts for heart rate monitors, and every time I get more, I utilize them. For example, Stephanie Lovato is now utilizing those, and she got some for her, for the population that she works with. So slowly but surely, it is expanding. And honestly, my vision is at the secondary level, we have 3 classroom sets at all 4 schools. And so everybody that's teaching will utilize the heart rate monitors, because it's wonderful. It's a wonderful teaching tool for the students, and it's just as powerful and impactful for the teachers. And we can really measure MVPA, moderate to vigorous physical activity, through that. And that's one of the ultimate goals. And it'll align very well with what we've written.
So so we have it at Sheehan, we have it at DAG.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just take 1 minute and just explain to everyone how you have this wall unit and just what it is? Because I don't know if people here even know.
Sure. For the last 10 years, I've utilized heart rate monitors in physical education. When I first started, the heart rate monitors had to go around a child's torso up against the skin, and it paired up with a watch. And the management was a nightmare, and it took a long time to put them on, and we had to have a secure place for students to put these on underneath the skin, and then cleaning them and making sure that the hygienics behind it all, it was beyond a challenge. The technology has improved so much, and leaps and bounds, and now it's just an arm unit that goes on, and a kid can slip it on, can clean it off really quickly afterwards with a wipe, and that arm unit connects to an iPad, and so the teacher can see all the students' heart rates and what's going on in class, and we can project that up on a wall. And we could use different names, we could use numbers, so kids don't know whose is whose other than their own, but it's instantaneous feedback, and we know effective teaching is giving kids feedback as quickly as possible. And so we teach kids, all right, safe exercise is having your heart rate in a certain zone, and that's what we want you to have. So what I've taught my kids, and I know the people that are using heart rate monitors are teaching their kids, is they'll actually go up and say, hey, you're working too hard. Slow down, take it easy. And it's a wonderful concept, and it's a wonderful teaching tool. And again, I hope to expand upon that.
All right.
Ms. Castelli?
I have a question with regard to the scoring criteria, because it appears to me, and you know, educate me if I'm way off base here. It seems that there's a level of subjectivity, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm concerned if there would be parents that might push back, especially for a student that maybe is not doing well. How then does the teacher, where's the teacher's proof that the student is not doing well?
So on any rubric that you use, on a 4-point scale, that's called a holistic rubric. We have a lot of items under 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. Any holistic rubric is inherently subjective. And as much as possible, we like to use analytic rubrics, which really break down each individual part of a skill or what we're trying to teach. The analytic rubrics, unfortunately, take a lot longer to administer. So what we've tried to do is use more analytic rubrics with peer assessments and formative assessments during units, and then the holistic rubric at the end. What this is heavy on is performance-based assessments. So the student's performing and the teacher is observing and providing the feedback and making the choice there. What I like about this is it changes how we grade, and it changes, and those kind of conversations, I want more of those. For example, at some levels, they just get a grade on skill in PE. What does that mean? Here, we're going to be saying there's a 2 for throwing and catching. And yes, there's going to be some disputes. There might be some disagreements, some arguments, but I think we have gotten specific enough with the rubrics that it'll be pretty clear. Number one. Number two, as far as the scoring criteria on our graduation standards goes, what I've been working with my teachers with is it's not one assessment and boom, you get a grade on that scoring criteria. We need at least 3 or 4 different types of assessments that are all tied to that same graduation standard before we assign that holistic grade.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Votto?
On the lifelong fitness, it's not really doing things, it's more or less lessons in how to keep healthy and keep fit. I mean, I don't see like kids doing push-ups and, what did you call it when we were in school? We took those tests, you know,
Fitness.
Fitness test?
fitness tests, which I hated.
If you turn to section, stage 3, instructional design, there's a lot of activity with this, and I can assure you that the kids' heart rates will be up. Now, obviously, we have 2 different middle schools, and they do things slightly differently, and we have different equipment at each middle school. So stage 3, it's on page, it starts on page 4, but I actually want you to look at page 5. Near the bottom, it says time available for 12 sessions, or 12 lessons, excuse me. One school, the way they structure their time with the students and the space that they have time for a lot more lessons specific to these concepts. And so in this stage is where we've laid out suggested learning experiences, and there are, that's where you'll see kind of the activities that will be going on. We need a lot of flexibility with this. For example, if we're doing a cardiovascular activity, well, I don't want them just doing running. I don't want to say running, lifelong activity. Kids may hate that. The whole idea is we want to expose them to a lot of different activities that could help them with their cardiovascular fitness. Someone may hate running, but they may love jump roping, or they may love playing one-on-one basketball with someone else, which is a cardiovascular activity. So we tried to provide enough flexibility for the teachers so they felt comfortable with the equipment that they have, the space that they have, to provide some choices for the students. And if you look further on, it says time available for 5 lessons. On the other side of town, they have a little bit of a shorter amount of time, and you could see again the fitness circuits and whatnot. So there are plenty of activities for that lifelong fitness unit. And it underscores our mission and our vision in physical education, which is to prepare the kids to be active, healthy adults and to take care of their bodies now while they're in middle school, but also 30, 40, 50 years from now.
See, I was looking at that first column, learning targets. So
That's what we're going to have. That's for the teachers to help them with objectives that are posted up on a whiteboard. So the teacher starts a class, they know, all right, I'm going to write this on the whiteboard, and this is going to help me with my introduction. This is going to help start the class off, and it's going to give a lot of direction for the teacher so they know what to emphasize. And by the end of this lesson, this is what I want the kids to be able to do.
I got that. In other words, one of them says, I can discuss the function of a cardiovascular endurance. To me, that sounds like it's a lesson that has been taught.
So
and
we
that's
learn.
your objective, that the child will know that at the end of such a lesson. But that has nothing to do with any physical activity they're going to be doing, or does it?
So it does,
Am I
because
really
we learn by doing.
Yes.
And so the kids will do those activities,
Okay.
and then for closure at the end is when we have the group discussion. Or during it, they will pause and stop. For example, some of the activities that the kids are doing aren't cardiovascular. And the kids, while they go from station to station, have to, on a little sheet of paper, decide, was this a cardio activity or was this not a cardio activity? Then at the end of the lesson, we have that group discussion and say, all right, which ones do you think were, why or why not, which ones were not?
I mean, I had Kathy's concerns as well about grading.
Yeah.
Because every child has various physical limits and can't probably do some of the things that are expected here. And I wonder if that stuff is taken into consideration.
And that's why I want to expand upon the use of heart rate monitors, because we can individualize lessons for each child, each student. For example, an athlete, a cross-country runner at the middle school level, it's going to take them a long time to get their heart rates up. For someone that's not in shape at the middle school level, they can just walk around the outside of the gym and their heart rate could be in the zone. But if you look at them, it looks like, oh, they're not working there that hard. No, they actually are. And we want to encourage them, and we want to tell them, hey, I love what you're doing right now. And we can't really, it's challenging to do that to the untrained eye unless you're actually looking into what their heart is doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, we'll start again with Mr. Votto.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
And yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Revised art graduation and music also?
Yep.
So before
Oh, you
Mr.
have quite a few,
Francesi
actually.
starts,
I'm
I
sorry?
said before you start, I just want to say, as you notice on the agenda, there's a huge amount of curriculum work that's been done in the area of social studies, art, and music. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Francesi for his hard work all year long. This curriculum has been in long need of revision, and he has worked very, very hard with his curricular staff to get as many units accomplished this year before his retirement on June 30th. So while he was able to bring to you quite a lot of work, he is still working with his curricular groups to try to finish as much as he can through June 30th. So I just did want to publicly thank him for all the hard work, to thank the staff for coming out of their classrooms, because largely they do come out of their classrooms to write curricular work, and to have the dedication to see this through. It is a long process that has a lot of discussion about just not only the curriculum itself, but assessment, teaching, instruction, and he's really done a lot of really nice work with his groups.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. In all fairness, I had some really good people to work with, and I had the benefit of having been an English teacher, so I can write well and revise other people's stuff well, which folks came to enjoy. I consider that a happenstance of good fortune. What is not a happenstance of good fortune is having a very good leader to work with and for, who provided great guidance, and she knows how I feel about her. I couldn't have done any of this without her support. And if she's going to be kind enough to praise me publicly, turnabout is fair play. Very much so. So anyway, when I was tasked with kind of becoming the humanities coordinator, the first thing we had to do was write art, music, art curriculum. God, I'm nervous because I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. Was to write the performance indicators and standards for art. And when we started, because at the high school level, which is really what was driving a lot of this, when we started, we did not address levels 1 and 4 in the scoring criteria. So, because we figured, and we didn't actually do a lot of the high school stuff, because we viewed it incorrectly, I think, as these are all optional courses, they're not required. How do you set a graduation standard for something that kids may never take? It was part of the development of understanding for mastery-based learning. And we got additional insight on that with input from other people, which was very valuable. So we did a lot of work on those things in both art and music, and I tried to focus people a lot. I'm big on less is more. Instead of trying to do everything in the kitchen sink, focus on what you're doing and do it well, and make it manageable for students as well as yourselves. So we did a lot of work in that regard, especially in music, and I think what we pulled off is pretty solid. We used, especially in music, some of the language, and not so much the language, but the thinking behind the state standards, which are really the national standards, because the state just kind of wholesale adopted them all. One really good example of that is that if you look at the performance indicators at the high school level, and later when you're looking at the curriculum that we wrote with that, you're going to see at the high school level that it's not written as grade bands, which is typically, if things are grouped, that's how it happens. They're written as bands of experience. So kids who come into the program a little later, but it's for them a first year or a second year, they're judged on the standard of first and second year experience, just like you would with an employee, instead of judging them on a more advanced level when they haven't gotten there yet. So you could have a kid who's a junior or a senior in terms of their high school career, but they're getting graded or assessed on a lower level because they don't have the years in, and they've learned less. Not sure what else to tell you about these, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Levesque?
Yes, on the art graduation standards, the AP Art Studio will come back to us after the College Board's changes to the curriculum?
I think that I would anticipate that, yeah. It didn't, we actually talked about doing it this year, and it had become clear that it was up for revision, and it made no sense to write stuff that was going to be essentially antiquated a year after it was written.
Do you have any idea of when those changes are going to occur?
I don't know when they'll be implemented by the AP. I believe that they're going to start looking at it next year, is what I think I've been told by some of my high school folk. One of the really good things you've got going is some of the high school art teachers are incredibly brilliant and incredibly conscientious. If you took a look, for example, at the Foundations in Art course, the curriculum they wrote, I would consider that a model that could be put up against anyone in the state without a heartbeat. And I drove them crazy, but they were tolerant of it and worked incredibly hard.
Other questions? Ms. Purcell?
First off, I just want to say I'm very, very excited to have art and music curriculum like this, so thank you so much. It has really been needed.
Like I said, thanks, Carrie, for the support.
I do want to ask about music, because you did say, the bands are there for K, 1, 2, 3, and then again, I get the high school, how it's like, year 1 and 2 and 3, 4. But could you explain how music's done in the middle school? Because I'm not sure, because it says 6, 8, so how does it grow or whatever?
The middle school is kind of a different animal for a variety of reasons. There are, if I remember, and please don't ask me a quote on this exactly because I've gone through an awful lot of units lately, but there are actually 4 different areas or courses that you would say. And there's a need to address them each a little bit individually, but there's also an effort, because there's still music, to link them all.
Got it.
We had a question come up from the DLT, for example, where they said, gee, the instrumental music people have this broken out separately than the general music people at the elementary level, so how come you didn't do that at the middle school level? Well, it's really not like that anywhere, except the instrumental music in grades 4 and 5, because it's brand new to them.
Right. I guess my question maybe is, and I just don't know, like what do students have to do in middle school? Like, do they have to take music every year?
Yes.
And it can be instrumental or vocal? It doesn't have to be a choir? What's it?
It could be both. There's a variety of options. So that the music department at any middle school is really probably one of your most flexible departments, because you have students who want to do both. So it's a variety of different options. And it's just, you know, it's a credit to the staff for making it all work.
Okay, but the kids have to do something every year.
Yes.
And
There's
it's for the
also a
semester?
general music
And we have a
course.
general music for students who don't want to take vocal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a
Or
general music
band.
course too. The other thing to keep in mind is that although students start taking, music in the elementary program, they don't really begin to develop a whole lot of expertise until later on in the process because they're very new to it and it's very foreign to what kids normally spend. I mean, you start working hard on literacy and numeracy pretty much from the day of birth. That's not what happens with art and music. So the need for multiple options for courses and things is strong in the middle school level. You need that flexibility that Dr. Menzo was speaking of very accurately.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Levesque?
When I had first come in before the meeting, I asked Mrs. Latour, who was on the Fine Arts Management Committee, and you can see the amount of work that went into this curriculum and how much care was taken. I mean, I'm looking at some of the things that everything is spelled out, especially for instrumental music, embouchure and bowing technique and things of that nature. And it's very clear where they're going and what they're doing. And I think it's fabulous for
Thank you.
teachers and for parents that are interested in knowing a little bit more about how exactly this is going to be taught. It's very clearly delineated.
Thank you. They worked hard on that. One thing to keep in mind, you know, I met with Carrie recently to tell her what I was going to be turning over to you folks, and I said I was disappointed because I only got done about half what I had hoped to, and she kind of looked at me like I was mildly insane, which I probably am. But none of these teachers, almost universally, had any experience writing under new curriculum protocols. None of them had any experience with that. So the first thing I had to do was train them in curriculum as it's done in Wallingford in a modern age. It was a lot of work for them, and again, it's a testament to their willingness to tolerate a whole lot of pressure and keep rolling. They did a great job.
But you can see that their experience in their fields also comes clearly through in the curriculum.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, one of the things I've always said is I can help anybody write curriculum, but I'm not an expert in music. I play a little guitar, but I'm not an expert. If you don't have people who actually are, you're not going to get a whole lot. So, yeah.
Very well done.
Just one more thing about the music, just to bring your attention. When many years ago now, I think we're probably on 8 years now, it wasn't where every student had to take music.
Right, that's what
So we switched over, so that's why there's the general music at both middle schools, which we felt, and that was a long time ago with the board, that we felt that was an essential because there are so many different parts of the brain that get really activated and matured through music. So that was why we went in that
Yeah,
direction.
there's actually a lot of research that shows a strong correlation between students who study music and their math performance, which, when you think about it, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because everything they're doing is essentially mathematically oriented for the rhythms and stuff. Anything else?
Any other questions? So are we okay if we go on D and E at the same time? Vote on D and E. Mr. Votto?
Yes.
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 And yes, thank you. Okay, moving forward to high school psych. This is
Hold on,
academic
can I
psychology?
just make a
Sure.
suggestion potentially?
Yes.
Which I know might make it out of order,
Yes,
but you have all of the music curricular units
got it.
and that lead into the art curricular units, so I'm just wondering if maybe we would want to comment, thank you, H through Q.
Yep.
If we would want to, if there's any questions about the fine arts curriculum that's been presented this evening, and then we can move on to the two social studies topics.
Works for me.
If that's okay with everybody.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions or comments about H through, what did we say, Q?
Q.
H through Q.
Wait a minute, you gotta give me a second.
So we're talking about general music in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3.
Right.
We're talking about instrumental music, grades 4 and 5.
Yeah,
We're talking about grade 6 band, choral, and string units. And we're talking about high school band, high school art foundations, and high school art photography.
I think I have one question.
Okay.
Ms. Purcell?
Just the grade 6 band unit 1. I mean, what I noticed when I went through all the different curriculums is that not every unit had a formal assessment, but
Mhm.
they had a formal assessment sometime within that time zone. And this one doesn't. Huh?
That was a requirement, minimum requirement I established.
Right,
with them.
but you only had, maybe it's because you only have one unit for this done, and maybe that's
Oh.
the issue. But
Yeah, that
all
is
the
the
other
issue.
ones did have an assessment, and this one didn't.
Yeah, that is the issue.
Okay.
We got bogged down a lot at the middle school level because they were trying to learn how to write curriculum for multiple subjects at the same time in multiple grades. And
Okay.
it's the same group of people. We ended up making the most progress in grade 6, still not what I would hope for.
Okay.
We have more work to do. I have some people coming in during the summer, not during the summer, but during June, to do some more of this work and at least fine tune some more of these units. There will be a substantial amount of work to continue as, after I'm gone. But that's kind of true of all of it.
All right. So
But
just
that is it.
so
And
my
if you-
suggestion would be maybe in Unit 2 or Unit 3, that there is a formal
Yeah.
assessment.
Unit 1, 2, to start the school year, you'll notice under
Right.
stage 2, there's a lot of formative assessment that's required.
Right.
Aligned to not only the content standards, but the transferable skills. So that'll ease students into the 6th grade year.
Yep.
And then, yes, I don't disagree with you. For units 2 and 3, there'll be more opportunities for more formal assessment.
Okay.
And again, as I had said, I told them they had to have at least one, a performance task per course. That was a minimum that I would accept.
Yes.
So they all know that, unless it gets changed, but they all knew that was the
No, it was
expectation.
clear in here. It's clear in
Questions,
the
Mr. Votto?
So right now, we only have up to grade 3, correct?
For
You
general
have grades
music.
4 and 5 for instrumental music.
For general music.
Right.
Correct.
Grade 4 is pretty close to done, and the elementary team is going to be working with me in June. Grade 5, I think, will get done. I think they'll be in a position to go to a management team early in September, get approval from the management team, and then go ahead and bring it to you folks. And for once, you'll get some curriculum early in the year instead of getting bogged down with thousands of pages at the end of the year.
And the music that's chosen is chosen by the teacher.
If you look at stage, yeah, if you look at stage 3, it's always, in the way this happens, the learning plan, it's always advisory in nature. So there are suggestions about what music can be used, but it's always, by design from the UBD people right in the beginning, it's always under teacher control to make final decisions. And frankly, I think it needs to be, so.
Now, the other question I had, Aaron, is okay if I can.
Yes.
The instrumental music, now that only pertains to those kids who take,
Correct,
Correct,
just wanted to clarify. And the same with the band,
correct.
right?
yeah. They do, I will tell you for what it's worth, they do a fair amount of promotion trying to get kids interested in the band courses at the not the middle school, but the elementary level. The teachers there are really enthusiastic, they're really dedicated, they're very warm, and they go out this time of year and they're bringing kids in to show them instruments. I just attended a concert, where was I? Parker Farms. That was actually a dress rehearsal, but they brought kids in to watch the performance, and Mr. Priori was there talking about, pick instruments, that kind of thing.
Oftentimes, the grades 3 through 5 instrumental music teachers will also have a day where the 3rd graders can try out different instruments to see how well they like them, how different instruments kind of get picked by certain students, and then they play, and then they try to steer them in the right direction as well. So we were actually at Pond Hill today. Mr. Counselor was doing that with many 3rd graders, letting them come down to the instrumental music room and try out various instruments to see how they fit.
Yeah, they all do that. And again, they're very warm, so it's a safe, comfortable environment. Kids are interested.
I like the accountability
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
So H through.
Okay, so let's
So
go ahead
that's
and do H through Q,
Q.
starting with Mr. Votto.
Yes.
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 And yes. Okay, so now we will backtrack back to F and G, our social studies, our high school psychology unit. This is academic psychology, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I just would like, you have academic psychology, and then you have grade 4 social studies, because I think it was last month, or maybe a few months ago, you did approve K1, 2, 3, and 5 social studies.
Yeah, we just hadn't
Fourth
quite
grade was
finished
the only one
the
missing.
fourth grade yet. So we got that done, and then it was a matter of having time on your agenda to be able to talk to you folks, because you were pretty busy.
So-
Ms. Purcell?
Questions? Sorry. Just on the psychology one,
Mm-hmm.
you have, if I turn to, let me get the page. So if I turn to the skills and acquisition, the skills and knowledge, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dealing with personality, and you have one thing dealing with stress in each of those columns. But then when you actually go to how you're going to look at them, under the instructional design, you have 1, 2, 3, you have more on stress and not so much on the other side. So I'm just curious.
You're saying, what's up with that?
What's up with that? Yeah, I mean, I'm
That's a
happy that you
perfectly-
have 3 things on stress, but it
That-
doesn't
No,
match.
I understand. It's a perfectly legitimate question. Again, the last section is advisory in nature. You know that from having done this work. And they're going to need to teach a whole lot more learning targets than are ever going to be listed in that thing.
Okay.
It's the nature of the business. Would I have loved to have them develop some things a little more? Yeah. I ended up doing a fair amount of revision work to clean things up and get it ready. But I also think to some extent, these folks need some experience applying this curricular model to a course that has been much looser in terms of how it was taught, in terms of the curriculum. The curriculum that was existing was very outdated. So there's going to be some learning curve stuff. And after a year or two, they're probably going to realize they need to make some revisions, and they'll be fine. They'll do that.
Okay, I just want to just make sure the assessing and the goals kind of match a little bit better, that's all.
I understand. I don't necessarily disagree with you either.
Okay.
Ms. Levesque?
In going through this curriculum, there is a tremendous amount of vocabulary.
They felt like that all had to be in there.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, trying to parse it out and cover that amount of vocabulary that is necessary for this course, just that there's a tremendous amount of it.
There is, and frankly, my own prejudice, and this has nothing to do with this particular course so much as my own thinking about education. I always get nervous when I see that, because it's very easy to teach a kid a definition, whether they really can use it or do anything with it, give them a quiz. The kid can score reasonably highly just by memorizing something the night before, and it can lead to a lot of very low-level learning. In this situation, we're trusting that the staff is not going to do that. I don't think they will. And they have some performance indicators, and they got to live up to those, and they're not all vocab.
Right.
So one hopes that they'll make that balance.
But in looking through the curriculum, there was a tremendous amount.
Yeah, there are.
Of
And keep in
vocabulary.
mind that for them, a lot of that is a function of the fact that they're addressing concepts that are completely new to those kids.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just memorizing a word and being able to use it in a sentence. It's, do I have any clue what psychology is actually all about? So it's a much more significant undertaking.
True.
Academic psychology is a full year course, correct?
Correct.
And how many sections are we running of academic psychology?
I believe there's 2 or 3 in, God, I can't claim to remember exactly. I'm not going to lie to you. I believe there's 2 or 3 in each of the high schools.
And then there's one AP section as well? Or is
Yes.
there more than one AP?
I think there's only one AP. I may be wrong. Again, I would have to, that's the kind of detail I'm not real good at remembering when I'm in the midst of writing and revising things so much. I will accept that as a limitation.
Academic?
Yes. And I'll get Lyman Hall in a second.
Wow.
That's current year.
It was an important class to get updated because it is fairly popular subscription.
Are our students that are in medical careers taking psychology? Is that part of the medical careers or not really?
It's not a requirement.
Certainly would be helpful.
Thank you.
Lyman Hall has 4 sections.
Wow, that's great. It's a strong academic elective. Any other questions or comments? Grade 4 social studies?
Or do we have to vote on that other one or no? Yeah, we can take consensus.
Any, on psychology first? You wanna do psychology first?
Mhm.
Take consensus on psychology first. Mr. Votto?
Are we talking F through all of that?
I think
We're
we're
just
just talking
all of that.
Just that.
It's just a lot here.
Keep starting with me, I get confused.
Sorry. Thank you.
Try and keep it
Yes.
straight when you're right.
Yes.
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 And yes. Okay, grade 4 social studies?
So,
This is pretty much the same model that we used on the other units you already approved at the other grade levels.
I just have one, this is a silly question, but I just.
There are no questions that are silly. There are only answers that are silly.
I get why you do, 4 weeks on the Northeast, because we live in the Northeast, and 4 weeks in the Southeast and Midwest, but then we do 4 weeks in the half the country. I was just curious why we do that.
I think there's a couple of things, one of which is, yes, we are here.
Because I'm from California, because we do the
and it's
opposite now.
a more valid thing. And I think frankly, teachers have better past experience and awareness of the Southwest and the West. It's also a newer region because there's a lot more history going back a lot further on the East Coast.
Sure,
And I think that's a big part of it too.
okay, because when you're just talking about climate and culture, it's very different in these different sections, so I was just curious.
You are absolutely correct.
Okay, it's a silly question, but,
No, it's really not.
I
It's a
just-
perfectly legitimate question.
all right.
Any other questions? You ready? Take consensus, Mr. Votto?
Yes.
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 And yes. Thank you.
The gun here. Okay.
That's
Okay,
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Franchese.
What about the art? Did you?
We did it.
We
Okay.
did it
Yep,
all.
we did it.
Okay.
You're free to
Yep.
go.
In that case, many thanks.
Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
I will. Feels good to be.
Done?
Okay, grades 4 and 5 phonics. Oh, I guess we have middle school language arts also. And literary themes, and grade 12 English. So let's start with
Yes.
phonics.
Yes. Excuse me. I'm thinking perhaps grades 4 and 5 phonics and word study are very similar. So I'll kind of give a broad overview on the two together. And then if you have any specific questions, grade specific, you could let me know. So I had last year a K3 phonics scope and sequence that came through around the same time of year. And we continued the work in grades 4 and 5 this year by building off of what is currently in our English language arts units for word study and doing some additional research using the same author that we used for K3. And really tried to round out the word study with more detail and description for the teacher, so it was a little clearer and more consistent for them to incorporate the phonics and word study in grades 4 and 5. So in grades 4 and 5, it becomes more of a word study than just a straight phonics. So you'll see for both 4th and 5th grade, I have an overview document that outlines by unit and by week, 3 different categories under word study: phonics and spelling, word study vocabulary, and then high frequency words. And the more detailed scope and sequence document includes word lists for teachers as support. And we're also going to be providing for teachers instructional support through lesson plans, instructional tips on good phonics and word study instruction. We're going to be outlining for them in their literacy block guidelines how much time and where the phonics and word study would fall on a weekly and a daily basis during their English language arts instruction.
Ms. Levesque?
Well, speaking of that, that leads into the exact question I had in mind. How much time do you anticipate them spending on phonics?
So the recommended is between 5 to 10 minutes a day out of a 90-minute block. And we always try to give a little bit of a range, knowing that depending on the ebb and flow of the writing instruction that's going on or the book clubs, it might be a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, depending on the other components of their block.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Raccio?
Yes, on the, I guess it's on both, 4 and 5. It says that some of the students may not be coming from classrooms where the structures demonstrated in the video that's in here have
Yep.
actually been in place. Why would that be? Because we've had that now for a year. So everybody should have had at least a year's worth of exposure.
So it's not that they're not implementing the actual curriculum, it's that we gave a demonstration video that teachers could use that particular instructional approach, but there's other instructional approaches they could use as well. So we gave it to them as sort of a model demo, but there's other ways that they could deliver.
So this curriculum.
The
is optional?
curriculum's delivered, but there's different ways a teacher might choose to plan and execute those lessons.
But we're only giving one.
Yeah, we gave a pretty concrete.
It's a great video. I'm not criticizing it.
Right.
But it's for a younger.
It's for a younger crowd, and there are other ways that teachers have adapted the phonics instruction into their literacy block. So we wanted to let them know that while many classrooms have been using that particular instructional approach that's in the video, there's other ways. In fact, the district's going to be purchasing some additional resources for teachers to kind of expand their repertoire of teaching strategies to teach the phonics scope and sequence.
It just seems that consistency in teaching all the students the same way would make it easier for the students as they go into these higher levels, as
Fair
opposed
enough.
to leaving it up to the teacher's discretion of whichever method they choose to use.
Well, yeah, so we have for the K3, we have a demonstration video where kids are typically using whiteboards, and the teacher, for whatever phonics skill is being taught on that particular day, will have the kids say it, write it, say it. So they give the student the skill, they write it in the corner, give them a variety of words from the list, and then they go through and they have them hold them up and check the spelling on them, and they'll talk it through sometimes.
It's a routine.
It's a routine,
And
yeah.
I mean, I think as children learn the routine, it's a skill, it's developed.
Yep.
So you're going to be in a classroom, particularly a 4th or 5th grade classroom, that some students may have had no exposure to the skill, and some may have had multiple years. So that's also starting students at an unleveled starting point.
Well, they'll have exposure to the skill. It's just that not every teacher's
the
delivering the
tapping,
skill in the same way.
Exactly.
So typically with curriculum, we don't usually mandate a particular instructional approach. We give teachers some autonomy in how they deliver it, but we did want to make a strong emphasis on that particular one, so that's why we have the video.
That's why,
Yeah.
seeing the video, I was under the impression that that was the only method of doing it.
No, I think
Because that
every
doesn't
every
say-
classroom has to have fidelity to the curriculum, so
Right.
to the skill, but not necessarily utilizing the exact same approach. You give teachers the tools that they need, and then based on the students that are sitting in front of them and their own teaching style, they determine the best way to implement the curriculum. So by giving them the video as a model, or they have their own instructional approach, as long as they are teaching the curriculum as prescribed and they're seeing student progress, that is what's most important to us. If they're not seeing the student progress, then that's a conversation that they have with their building administrator, their grade level team, like, hey, you know, I'm not seeing some of the gains that I would like to see. That's why they're given multiple different resources in order to teach the skill. We would not generally say you must teach it this exact way, because every classroom is a little bit different with their students and every teacher is a little bit different with their style. What's most important is the fidelity of the curriculum.
And I understand that. That's why I was surprised to only see one video and have it be at a lower level. And this implied that this was going to be consistent through all of 4th and 5th grade. Okay. On the top of the scope and sequence, when it says words are not to be sent home or memorized, is that just words for this phonics, or will there still be spelling lists sent home by some 4th and 5th grade teachers?
Those are the lists that are in here for the phonics, but we don't encourage the spelling lists per se. More, we're trying to teach students the patterns with some of the sounds and word families, and have them be more strategic in how they're learning to spell words.
Okay, so that'll still be optional. Okay.
Ms. Purcell?
Just one question. The high-frequency words are the same for 4th and 5th?
Yes.
And I'm just asking why, because there's not any learning going from one to the next?
Yeah, so that's built off of the 4 most common high-frequency word lists, which are started in our K-3 scope and sequence. And as we did our research, we found that as students so 4th and 5th grade is a little tricky with phonics, because it becomes less of a phonics and more of a word study. And so what we did was the foundation of the phonics and word study research that we did is a lot of review and repeat. So the review and the repeat of the high frequency words was the recommended approach, because the kids have already had exposure to all of the more common lists that they would find in the literature that they're reading. And so this was the recommended review and repeat pattern that the research we did had suggested.
Mr. Votto?
I have never seen anything so, I mean, it's just so much in here. And, in my experience, I've never seen, it seems like it's an enormous amount of work. I notice it's very prescriptive. That's the word I was looking for. It takes a while for it to come through. You have day 1, day 2, day 3. I mean, it doesn't have to be that specific, does it? I mean, they could maybe combine a few days together if it allows it to be done, if the time allows that, or instances.
Yes, and you'll find as you go through the more specific scope and sequence that most weeks there's either a 4th and 5th day combination or a 5th day that's a review and repeat. It's a lot of review and repeat of patterns. So whether it be the high frequency words or the actual phonics skills or the vocabulary roots and prefixes, suffixes. So yes, so there is a good degree of opportunity to review and repeat in their previously learned skills. We really wanted to emphasize that with teachers, as that was really one of the things that they identified as a pitfall with phonics instruction, is always moving on to new and not giving kids enough time to develop muscle memory with the information.
My concern, and you mentioned before that somebody asked you like 5 to 10 minutes of phonics, but really, this is integrated all day long.
It is. It is integrated all day long.
Okay.
It takes a lot to finesse to get it integrated.
Yeah.
We find that vocabulary is tricky. The most recommended approach with vocabulary is integrated vocabulary, but it's teaching the kids to identify chunks of words or parts of words, and then reminding them as they're conversing and reading to continue to. Exactly. Like psychology. A lot of them in there, yeah.
As far as materials.
Yeah.
Consumables, is that what they use?
We're not using consumables. We're providing teachers with a resource that's going to have recommended lesson plans for the various skills. It has We do find that a lot of our teachers in 4th and 5th grade are not accustomed to teaching phonics regularly, so it's going to provide them with a strong foundation for the most recommended approaches to teaching phonics and word study. It also outlines for them additional word lists and resources that they can add to what's here if they need it.
I think this is something that's really needed today. Get back to
I think so too.
basics like we used to do.
Right. We've had an extremely positive response to our K-3 scope and sequence this year, unsolicited. I've had a lot of teachers who've really found that even though they're still kind of getting their legs under them with it, that they appreciate knowing, you know, where the kids are coming from, where they're going, and, you know, having a go-to prescriptive resource for them to curriculum to follow.
You don't do spelling words, or you do?
So spelling is really tied to the phonics skill, and that's why you'll see phonics and spelling are categorized together in here. And so the research we did really accentuates dictation of the phonics skill that you're teaching students, and then having it transfer to spelling and then into students' writing. So that's really, we're trying to give teachers sort of a segue into practical application in their writing through this piece, rather than memorizing a spelling list.
So they never do that?
We're not recommending it, no.
Now I am about spelling.
Any other questions, comments?
Do you cover any kind of hyphenating words if they're continued onto another line, or I see a lot of mistakes in that area?
I don't know that we addressed that specifically in here per se, but
I
that's
mean,
something I could
I
take
think
a
that-
peek at. I don't think
that
it's
might
come
be-
up.
I think that might be helpful
Sure.
because I've seen a number of errors in that arena.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Let's go ahead and take consensus on R and S, 4 and 5 phonics. Mr. Votto?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Let's launch the reading workshop.
Okay, so as a
Get it? Launching the reading workshop?
as a conclusion to the other middle school language arts units that I brought last month, in K-5 we have an introductory unit in language arts at the beginning of the year called Launching the Reading and Writing Workshop. This is a middle school version of that. It's a 4-week unit, and it's really an introductory unit for teachers to set the stage for students on what the expectations, routines in a workshop classroom are. Really introduce them to their classroom library, talk about book handling, get to know kids as readers through conferencing, more of a formative assessment period, give students laying a foundation for their expectations while they're doing small group work, when they're in book clubs, how to have a productive book club discussion. We found through some trying of the workshop at the middle school this year that a lot of the teachers had not spent this time at the beginning of the year and were struggling with, you know, if they were working with a small group, they had a line of students waiting at their table with questions that they probably could have answered if they had checked with a peer or just looked around the room at some of the tools that they had available to them. So we're really trying to help teachers maximize their time by setting those ground foundational expectations at the beginning of the year, so that the rest of their units that we presented last month are successful. So all of the teachers are getting have a copy of a guide to the reading workshop, which there's a picture of on the front cover. And there's extensive online resources that outline lessons for them. Other pieces to this include helping students launch their independent reading and expectations on that, how important it is for them to, you know, explore different genres, challenge themselves, and then if they aren't enjoying a book, it's okay to abandon a book and try another book, and they don't always have to feel obligated to finish that book, and the joys of having a book club conversation and really getting to experience a book that they're enjoying with other peers. So there's a lot of really great foundational pieces in this first 4 weeks, but also taking the time for teachers to administer their ERLAs and get to know students as readers and have a bit of a conversation with them. What did you read over the summer? How much did you read? Are you a reluctant reader? And get a sense of what work they need to do with each student for goals and challenging them to keep moving forward as readers.
Ms. Levesque?
I like the way you've laid this out, especially the skills, make good book choices based on ability and interest.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, when I read, notice when a book is not working for you, even adults will keep
Plugging
going.
through.
They'll keep,
Mhm.
maybe it's gonna get a little more interesting if I read another 25 or 50 pages. And, for those of us who were encouraged to read, it's very difficult sometimes to say, you know what, this isn't really of interest to me in a leisure book.
Right.
And maybe I need to try something else.
Right.
And sometimes that's difficult to do, so.
Yeah. We find a lot of our middle schoolers feel this need to kind of trudge through it, sort of a little bit of a fixation on
Not only middle school.
Not only
students
middle
do that.
school, no, this is true.
But this almost says, maybe you should look at, not just read 2 pages and feel like you're done, but give it a good chance. And if it's not for you, it's okay to say, you know what, I don't think this is doing it for me.
Right.
Let me try something else.
Right. The foundation of this unit is really becoming a reader. And if you're not a reader, how can we help you?
Be interested in
Find
reading
yourself
something
as a
that
reader.
you like to read.
Right.
Yes, I think that's appropriate.
Any other questions or comments? I have one comment. My biggest concern with reading workshop in the middle level are kids with significant executive functioning issues who may start and never finish a book. If we give them an out every time, they may never
Well, you don't
finish a
want to do
book.
that.
Mm.
So I'm wondering how we keep kids like that accountable for what they should be reading.
The premise behind abandoned book would be more, it's not something that's of interest, or maybe it's a little too difficult. So I think that if that was the case for a student like that, I don't think when you abandon book, it's that you don't pick up another book. So I think the teacher would continue to coach them if that did become sort of a chronic escape for certain students, to help them find something that would work for them.
Also, remember, this is just the launching unit, so throughout the rest of the units that were approved last month, teachers are continually meeting with students to conference, meeting with them through facilitated book clubs, so they'll be very aware of the consistent completion of novels for that particular student. This kind of outlines just that initial protocol of when is it okay to abandon a book. But throughout the rest of the units, as they're settling into the different curriculum topics for the year, they're meeting regularly with all the students in their class. So they'll be able to keep very close tabs on any students and how often or how long they're staying in a particular novel or how much they're abandoning a particular novel. And they'll be able to get right on that with the student.
And when we talk about abandoning, are these the anchor texts that they're abandoning?
No.
The option?
No.
That's
No.
totally separate. These are
Correct.
their own book choices.
Right.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about the anchor text and how that's utilized in middle school?
Absolutely. So in the workshop units, there are mentor text excerpts that teachers have selected to teach a particular skill or topic. And then from there, students are applying those skills or themed strategies in book club selections or independent reads. So it removes, in a sense, the whole class novel in its entirety and has teachers using more targeted short text excerpts to teach a particular skill or strategy.
Any other questions? Okay, let's take consensus on middle school language arts. Mr. Votto?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, grade 9, ordinary people.
Yes. Revisiting the title Ordinary People that I brought in February for grade 9, I brought back the feedback to the department and the management team that I got from the board back in February. And the conversation that took place with the department and the management team was they do feel like the best place for this book would be in grade 9. They understood the board's concerns. Just the nature of the curriculum in 10, 11, and 12 didn't quite fit this particular book. Even in grade 12, where we have the life, love, death, and immortality, it takes a little bit more of a fantasy spin, if you will, that type of, that particular course. The unit would fit in particular in grade 9 in 2 of the units, choices and consequences and search for identity. The anchor text would, so it would be one anchor text option that could be selected. And the sensitive topics that are included in the book, in particular was brought up in February, was suicide. I revised the description so it was a little more transparent so that when it's sent home in the parent communication, parents wouldn't have to go looking online for that information. And the anchor text format that we have at the high school provides a whole class read. We've had a lot of professional development at the high school this year around whole class novels versus book club or choice reading or small group reading. And one of the benefits of a whole class novel is the platform of everybody reading a book together and then having conversations that are shared. And so with a book like this that has sensitive topics, students would have the benefit of the teacher guiding the conversation as a whole group to address tough topics. I mean, even if you explore this book further, there's a lot of tough topics in this book, but a lot of relationship issues. It's very much fits our grade 9 curriculum. It's realistic fiction at the utmost. It's got a lot of relationship issues. It has mental health that comes up. It has the depression. It does have suicide. And in the end, it's a lot of healing that comes as a result of the interactions between the characters and the 2 perspectives that are in the book. And so the management team felt that through the whole class approach that students would have the support of that whole class novel, the community of the reading of it together, to guide them through the tough topics, which they prefer to have versus a student reading it either as an independent read or a small group read where perhaps the teacher's not an integral part of the conversation at all times.
Ms. Levesque?
Could you refresh me? I know it doesn't have an ERLA rating, but what level is this book at by other measures?
It's high school. It doesn't, to be honest with you, it doesn't have an ERLA rating because the database we use doesn't always have all of the
Right.
titles in there. It does come out as a 912 rating on the Scholastic Book Wizard.
Okay.
So it's high school in general. I couldn't find much more specific on it.
Any other questions? Ms. Raccio?
Is this the first year that we went back to the class reads? I'm 3 years out from freshman English, and it was more of the book clubs 3 years ago. Because my concern is if there is a student having it be a class read, if there's a parent who opts out because of the suicide or mental health or anything,
Right.
that student is then given an alternate book and totally segregated. There's no option to go to another group or read another book.
Good point. Our high school curriculum right now is set up primarily as whole class anchor text reads. We're reviewing high school English next year. We do have some teachers who will use some of the anchor text titles as book clubs, but not as widespread as at the younger grades.
So there's less personal choice.
Right now, there's not as much.
Ms. Russell?
First, I want to say thank you so much for changing the description, because now I do agree that a parent could look at this and not be surprised and could give support. And I also like the idea that what you said, it's not a small group reading it. They read it together and they talk together and they discuss the hard topics, because I do truly think these things have to be discussed. But I just wanted to make sure there was a strategy, that there's a way that it was being done.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Mr. Votto?
I'm happy to hear you say whole class. And I was not happy when you said it for the middle schools, because I really think there's a bigger benefit when you use a novel where the whole class is reading it for the exact reasons you just mentioned. Is there a time for book club and small group reading, a certain book, whatever, an anchor book or whatever? Yes. But I do think there should come a few times during a school year, even in the middle school level, where children are all reading the same book. And we, the Board of Education, we choose those books. And if it's part of the curriculum, so be it. And I think every child should have to follow along with that. That's my opinion. But I do think the whole class approach, to me, is much more beneficial, because you have a teacher the teacher is the instructor. Kids can work in small groups and teach each other, that's great. But a teacher can make sure that there are certain things that they want the children to know, to learn about, again, I'm losing my retraction, trying to get that word. But you know what I'm saying. I really think with the teacher driving it, there's something that's going to be left out. So I'm glad to hear that. And I just wish we would go back and do a little bit more of that in the middle school, as well, even if it was twice a year. And not just in English class. In history class, why not read Daniel's story about the Holocaust? And cross-curricular with the English teacher. There's so many things you could do interdisciplinary with that type of
lots
thing.
of things,
I
yes.
like to see more of that. That's my opinion.
Ms. Levesque?
Yes, one more time, could you just review exactly how the anchor text book goes home to parents, the list?
Yes.
And just for everyone's
Yep.
refreshment and those at home.
Absolutely. At least a week before each unit, the teacher selects which books they're going to be incorporating into a particular unit, and send home the list to parents with a description of the unit as well, so that parents know which titles are going to go with which unit, and they have at least that week buffer before the unit starts.
And they're made aware of the form that they can opt out if they
It's all
so
on
choose?
the same letter.
Okay.
So they get there. It's the titles are embedded in the letter to the parents with the opt out language at the bottom.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because some parents would have no trouble with our curriculum choices. Some parents, because of a particular issue, may have a problem with it. And so just so that they're aware and they have a clear, I too agree that this is a better, more explicit writing of the paragraph, so that it's a little more clear for parents.
Good.
Ms. McKay?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say thank you for revisiting and refining. I think this is a very, very important topic, sadly, but a very important topic. And I think when you look at the youth, topics that may, in my generation would not have been broached at a particular age is not necessarily the case today. And I think that young people are exposed to a lot of things that aren't necessarily great, but they're just a part of our reality. And I think just the way our world operates today, they're exposed to a lot more very difficult things. They're not sheltered. They're exposed to so much through a variety of means. So I really appreciate that you guys stuck with this, and you heard, I was in favor before, but I still remain in favor. I think it's a really important topic, and I think it's an important book. And I really appreciate you guys heard concerns of board members and, honed in on that and revised it. And I hope it meets the needs of board members that weren't comfortable before. But I think it's a really important book and a real important topic to have included. So I just want to make that comment.
Any other questions or comments about ordinary people? Okay, let's go ahead and take consensus. Mr. Votto?
Yes.
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 And yes. Thank you. And last but not least, the grass dancer.
Yep, The Grass Dancer is a book that actually we have used in the past, but it's not currently written into our curriculum. It's a proposal to add it to grade 12, mythology and monsters, and life, love, death, and immortality, which are the two options that students have in grade 12. The novel actually is around the Sioux Native American tribe. The author is actually a member of the tribe, and it's an interesting novel. It kind of explores ancestral connections with current characters, and it's got 3 different storylines going on and crosses generations, and really kind of gets into a mythological, cultural storyline. It's very interesting. The teachers who used it years ago said that they had a lot of success with students with it, so we're interested in adding it back in.
Questions, comments? Let's go ahead and take consensus on the grass dancer. We'll start with Ms. McKay.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we are going to discuss a new policy on electronic devices.
So this will replace the policy that's on file, JFCK, from 1996, which is the use of beepers and cellular telephones.
Pages.
Beepers is actually in the title. The policy was written and approved and adopted in 1996 and last revised in 2003. So it was time to take another look at it and update it to today's day and age. You'll notice this is just the first read, so it is open to any revisions, changes, questions, comments, but it's pretty straightforward. Elementary school students, for this, we have determined that we recognize that in this day and age, many of our students have cell phones at the elementary level, but we are asking that they remain not visible, used, or activated throughout the instructional school day. So that is from arrival through dismissal. They should keep them in a non-visible, secure location throughout the school day. We did understand, as a policy committee, we met on this policy quite a few times for many hours and went around and around and around. So again, we are certainly open to people's reflections on it, but we felt that many students at the elementary level are using their cellular devices at the bus stop or potentially even on the school bus, and had a lot of debate of how that would go on a school bus. We recognize it's happening now, as much as we try to remind students that they shouldn't be a disruption or a distraction. Lots of concerns ranging from, there are 12-year-olds on the bus, and then there are 4-year-olds on the bus, the same school bus. So we did insert the fact that it should be for personal use only, not to be shared with the student 5 rows ahead of you or 5 rows behind you, and that potentially even the fact that maybe earbuds or headphones would be used if a child chooses to listen to music on the bus on their way to school. Everybody has a different taste in music. We recognize for some it could be a very settling activity as they ride to school, but we also recognize that sometimes it could be very disruptive. So this is where we landed. We knew that they might come out on a bus, but if they are out on a bus, that maybe if the child had earbuds or headphones on, it wouldn't be a disruption to the entire bus. And then we also recognize that if that children aren't using it thoughtfully on the school bus, we do have other policies in terms of bus behavior and such on file, and it would be up to the school bus driver to address that with building administration. So that kind of gives you an overview of what we're looking at for the elementary school student. The change in this particular policy is that in the 1996 one, it doesn't differentiate by level. It basically stated that for cell phones, the students could have them for all levels while they're in school, but they should be turned off and out of sight except during lunch. And so we felt that given the access to cell phones for many of our students, some of our K2 students have cell phones at school, that we really did need to break out by level, and we did not feel that it would be appropriate to have them out and about during the school day at the elementary level. So for middle school and high school, again, there was a lot of debate through the committee. And to the best of my memory, we stated that middle school and high school, there is a difference in terms of age and maturity, that you know, having the cell phones on the school bus at the school bus stop was appropriate given the age of our students, that they still should be off throughout the instructional part of the day, so in their classrooms, and not visible. And that, you know, we recognize that students would have them before and after the school day, during lunch, passing periods, or we felt very important to list out in an emergency situation. So that kind of covers the when they can be out and used during the school day. And then the backside of the policy just speaks to, while those two sections are in place, certainly if permission is granted by an administrator, teacher, or school staff member, that there might be some changes to those, but that would be in very unique circumstances with prior permission. That the use of the device is written into a child's individualized education program or 504 plan, or in any emergency, so at any level, that might be a safety emergency, that we recognize that that could supersede, you know, the two situations earlier. We also, you know, just kind of put in there things that they shouldn't be used for, and we listed out, you know, things like a threat to academic integrity, or if it disrupts the learning environment or violates the privacy of others. And you know, you'll see the backside of that as well. This policy works in conjunction with our other school policies, student discipline, bullying, cyberbullying. You know, they kind of go hand in hand. So we didn't feel the need to really be very lengthy in this particular policy. We just needed to make certain that we were clear in when students could have their device out and when they shouldn't have their device out. And we felt very strongly that it did need to be differentiated by level. Did I miss
Mr. Votto?
anything?
No, you did not.
Okay.
You did a good job. As Mrs. Latour referred to, we did spend the policy committees, Kathy, Pat and I, with Carrie, and we did spend a lot of time on this one. As you know, it's, you know, am I on? Yeah. You can hear me.
Yeah, so you can hear
Into
you.
the mic.
Okay. There was a lot of discussion on many aspects of this. You know, it's been a while since we did talk about this because our schedules go crazy and we kind of, you kind of forget some of the gist of the conversations, but when things we might have agreed on or didn't agree on. My personal thing is I don't remember agreeing with the middle school lunch use of the cell phone. I could be totally wrong. And I think I know at one point we felt that, you know, it should be brought to the whole board and maybe have that decision made maybe with the whole board, because either way it's got to be done by all of us. We have to approve it. That's why we do it 3 times. With that background, I just want to express my opinion that I hear from so many parents that they don't want their children using a cell phone during lunchtime. I'm talking middle school now. They feel that they are spending too much time on that phone. They're not conversing with the other children, socializing in a different way. Don't forget, middle school doesn't have recess. They do have PE, but you know, you're usually in an organized, structured sport, and you don't have that time to interact socially. And it also, I believe, my own opinion is, I think sometime when a child's on that phone in the lunch, you can't, if there's 100 kids in that lunchroom, how are you gonna make sure they're all on the right, doing the right thing with that cell phone? You can't, it's impossible. So besides my own opinion, I have heard this from a number of parents. I'm not telling you 100 parents, but the few parents that I have talked to, they felt that way. It's written this way, which is fine, but because we do have the opportunity to discuss it tonight and see if we want to tweak this in any way we feel necessary. I know the biggest discussion was the cell phone on the phone, the phone on the bus. I mean, it was like, you know, how can a bus driver make sure the kid's not on the phone and da-da-da? That was a tough one. But this is in school where we have the control. And I want to make sure for everybody out there, we are not saying children cannot bring cell phones to school. They can have them in school. And as long as they're not turned on and not in sight, have we decided that for the high school yet, if they can be on the desk or not? That was another thing.
No.
You know, there's little things like that you don't think of. I've talked to teachers, and some say, yes, it should be on their desk so we can see if it's on or not.
No, it says right here in middle and high school, are to be kept in the off position throughout the instructional day.
But should it be in their packet, or should it be on their desk?
Flip it over
Well,
on the
you
other
should have
side.
it on your desk if it's not, if
Well,
it's in
it's
the
an
office.
Right.
issue. That's-
We didn't distinguish in the section under middle school and high school of where that phone or
Should
device
be.
would be. We felt, the tenor of our conversation was at the elementary level, it really should be kind of in your backpack in the classroom, you know, out of sight. We recognize that at the middle school and high school with passing time and all of those things, while we did talk about how some teachers have them on the desks, some teachers don't want to see them on the desks, we didn't specify here. We
Right.
just said they had to be off during instructional
Right.
periods. So,
If we want, I guess it's up to us if we want that, get that specific in the policy. Or do you leave it up to individual teachers to decide? I know some teachers that have like a little shoe, you know, those things you put shoes in that you hang on the wall. Or you know, have the kids come in and put their phone in there. And then when they leave, they take the phone out.
Yeah.
But like Carrie said, sometimes that time is a problem because that takes time to put it in when you get there and when you leave. So it might interrupt the instructional time. So there are a few things that I think we as a board have to decide that are not going to be easy decisions to make. Well, for me they might be, but for others it might not be.
Ms. McKay?
So just a couple of quick things that I have, and this is just a procedural thing. This is considered a new policy, not a revision. Is that
it
true?
changed so dramatically
Yeah,
that we
that's what I'm
did list
wondering.
it as a new, and then as
Okay.
soon as this is in place
Yep.
after the third read, I'll bring back to the board a deletion of the JFCK policy.
Okay, that's fine. And so, normally, I don't think when we're instituting a new policy, we necessarily identify it to families as this is a new Board of Ed policy. It'll be in the calendar or whatever, you know, we're all policies. But I'm wondering, because this does affect so many people, are we looking to communicate this policy in a fashion that, you know, is pretty clear to all of our family, whatever it ends up being, you know, we decide. How are we looking to, are we looking to
I think
communicate
we
this?
communicate the same way we did with the attendance policy. Remember that one was the last really big policy, as well as
Yep.
the responsible use policy for technology. So those were three policies that are, or two policies rather, that we did communicate directly to families. It's in the handbooks, but we brought special attention to it. So we send out separate letters. We still get questions about not so much about the responsible use policy, but about the attendance policy. So we always get questions about that, but we did communicate directly to families.
Yeah.
Prior to school year starting, we gave them the policy, we explained, you know, that there was a change in procedure.
So is that,
and we did it for bullying too.
so is that something you're looking to do for this
Yeah, the
policy
same,
as well?
the same approach.
Yeah, and then the other one is I just want to I appreciate, Mike, all your observations and comments, because you're right, they're nuanced, but they're important that we need to think about. And then I just liked the fact, for the parents' sake, how you defined and explained what's an emergency and how to react in an emergency. I think that's really important, and especially since you are looking to communicate this specifically to families, once we all decide what that looks like. I think that's very valuable. So I just want to make that observation. Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes, as Mike alluded to, and Kathy will, no, we went around, had a lot of discussion. I'm still concerned, not just with the middle school level lunch period, but also high school. I mean, I've had experience doing CAF duty in a high school. I'm of the opinion phones should not be allowed during lunch at the high school, and probably the most, really my biggest concern is during passing time. Students need to get from point A to point B. I have seen students almost go down a flight of stairs, my experience at a high school, because they're texting. And in my opinion, there is no need for them to have their phones out during passing time. They need to get to their next class.
Thank you, Ms. Levesque.
Do we have any demographic information about how often phones end up in the lost and found?
I do not.
I wonder
I
if we
can ask.
could find that, because in thinking.
I highly doubt that they do.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes things are left in places, like, I'm thinking of the
I
lunchway.
can see
Not
gym
phones.
shorts. I can see gyms, not
Water
even
bottles.
sneakers, water bottles, but.
Sweatshirts,
Books.
winter coats, not phones.
But we'll check on that. We could ask both principals at the, well, all four principals.
Because
will ask.
if people are doing things and they inadvertently, are at lunch and it goes in
Sure.
the way of the tray.
The way.
The way of the tray, yes. That can be something. And I like the last paragraph that says the district is not responsible for the loss, theft, or damage of anything that is in this policy that this is referring to, if it's brought to school, because things do happen to phones. They fall, they crack, they do other things, so, and that can be costly. The last thing I have is, you make reference to that this dovetails with other policies. Does it dovetail with other Connecticut general statutes, especially the second page, where it says number 3, when a school official has reasonable suspicion that it's being used to violate laws, et cetera?
In the CAPE model policies that I looked at, this was the main statute that it aligned to. It did reference different case law, but not general statute. So, while we look at, when we think about our bullying policy, cyberbullying, student discipline, even some of our privacy and all of that, this would fall under, but there was not a direct alignment that I saw to any other state statutes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I just have a lot of questions on needed in an emergency. I've seen and I've heard of instances where the parent will try to get hold of the kid, they hear something's going on at school. When there's a lockdown or a lockdown drill, I'm of the opinion that the cell phone should be absolutely off and not even visible. I know there's been instances where they'll hear about a lockdown drill, the parents will call the kid, are you in lockdown? Well, unfortunately, it's a drill. Fortunately, it's a drill. But if it's not, if it's an active shooter walking down, he hears the cell phone go off, they're dead. The parent killed the kid. And
It doesn't speak in here to the parent, it speaks specifically to parents communicating directly with their children through the main office.
Right.
It only speaks to, in the case of an emergency, for a student to utilize their cell phone in a time that's not identified in section 1 or 2. And that is in an emergency that threatens the safety of students, staff, or other individuals.
Which would, give me an example.
Of what emergency that is?
Yeah.
That
what-
threatens the safety of a student?
That a student can pick up and call somebody.
Well, we talked about the very things that, could occur in a school that we wouldn't be able to prevent. So we talked about, intruder situations and that type of thing, where a student may have that. And it's not so much for the parent to contact their student, but it is one of the things that is in many of the model policies as well that we discussed as a policy committee, that a student would need to be able to pick up the phone and call their parent if they really felt that their life was threatened and their safety was threatened. So that's kind of what the policy committee
All right, well,
wanted to include.
I'm concerned about that, because in doing that, he may affect the safety of the rest of the students in the room. I'm really concerned about that. I'm opposed to that, absolutely. You're in a lockdown situation, everybody's quiet, and the
I
kid
think that one
figures,
is going to
"I
be
gotta-"
hard to
Yeah, the
enforce a
challenge,
little bit.
I think in general, this policy is hard to enforce, to
Yep.
be very honest. So unless you're going to go the route of, and I don't want to name the district because I'm not sure I have it accurate, but there is a district in the state that I know locked up, I believe, cell phones, or they have the thing where you can lock them up in the beginning of the day, and that's where they go. Unless you're going to go that route, there's no way that we can expect 100% fidelity in this policy. I just think it's unrealistic to think of that on behalf of our teachers, our administrators. I think this is an opportunity for us to at least express our philosophical beliefs on this this topic, but I think the actual practical implementation of this is very, very difficult. I really, really do.
Yeah,
No, I
well,
think the whole policy, to be honest, in general.
Well,
I think it's very, very difficult. So if the board wants to entertain, having cell phones turned in or locked up at the beginning of the school day, which I'm not recommending, and I want to go on the record, I'm not recommending that, and I'll say it again for everybody out there, I am not recommending that. That's the only way, though, that you're going to have a true, fidelity to this policy. It's very, very difficult. Having been a principal myself, having been a classroom teacher, principal, the cell phones were just coming in when I was there, and then when I was a superintendent, my first superintendency, cell phones were already, again in existence, and it was a K-6 school, and the sixth graders had them, and it was not always easy. And I don't envy the position of our teachers and our administrators with this particular policy. So I think in principle, I don't disagree with you, Mr. Ross, at all. I think practically speaking, to say that we're going to be able to control all of those circumstances, it's a burden that I just don't think is realistic. So I just needed to say that.
The other part that I was also concerned about is, I used to be a school bus driver, and there's no way that we can expect a school bus driver
Correct.
to monitor cell phone use
Correct.
of any kind.
Correct.
Of any kind. If
We
I
want
were-
them to drive.
Yeah, if I was the owner of the company, I'd say, that's not our problem.
Well, I think that, again, I think what will end up happening with school buses, as usually happens, as Ms. Latour said, was that if there's a problem on a bus driver does know there's a problem. They know that either students are being too loud or disruptive, switching seats. They see that. What ends up happening 9 out of 10 times, the investigation occurs. If it's found to be the cell phone that is the cause of this, be it being used for music, be it talking, texting, whatever it may be, then there are policies that allow us to handle that in a more controlled manner. The bus, well, I'm not advocating like you are either. You're not either that the bus driver control that. I think the bus actually is a more contained environment, so to speak, that we can make sure that the cell phones, if they are being used in the appropriate manner. I think it becomes more challenging, as was mentioned, the hallways, the cafeteria, the classrooms. It becomes much more difficult. But I'll pause because I know Mrs. Corso has something to add.
I had written down exactly what you were talking about, that logistically, I work in a high school, I see it every day. Logistically, it's very difficult to remove cell phones from students. Even when our policy says you are not allowed to have your cell phone, and I can say to a student, put your cell phone away, I cannot take a cell phone from a student. I can't do it. I don't know if it's law, but I'm not gonna touch a student to take their cell phone away from them. So I think logistically, it's very difficult for us to completely outlaw and ban cell phones. However, I also don't think it's fair that we allow some teachers to say you can have it in this class, but other teachers, you can't have it in that class. I don't think that's fair to the teachers that don't want it. I don't think there's any academic reason for students to have cell phones in their classes anymore, because we're one-to-one Chromebooks at both the middle school and at the high school. I think there was an argument for a while that said, well, I can get on my cell phone and Google search something, but now I have a Chromebook here, I can do that on a Chromebook. So I do think that philosophically, I agree with a policy, with restrictions on cell phones, but logistically, it's really difficult to enforce. I would think that somewhere in that policy, we would need to say we reserve the right to so-and-so about the phone. We reserve the right to suspend or whatever we may need to do if those cell phones become an issue. I also just want to comment The College Board has their own policy, which requires students to turn their phones in when they're taking SATs or APs. And so they are requiring that, and kids are complying, and there could still be an emergency during an SAT, but kids and families are complying with that. And if they don't, they're removed. Yeah, they get booted from the test, they don't get their money back. You know, there's really no argument. So that's what I have to say. Ms. Costelli?
Okay, so just a couple of points. First, I'd like to make sure that we define
got it.
the term off. CABE did supply, kept in the off position means powered completely off and not simply set on a vibrate, silent, standby, hibernation, or airplane mode. And I'd also like to have us include the definition of the instructional day, because, for example, in their definition, it says the instructional day includes but is not limited to study halls and other structured or non-structured instructional activity that occurs during the normal school day. So basically, it's from the minute you walk in the school to the minute you leave the school. We need to make sure that that's clear. My second point is what part of our discussion as a committee where we couldn't come to an agreement. I was at odds with Mike and Pat with not during lunch at all. Carrie, I think, was one who suggested maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the lunch period, which I thought was
You're talking about high school, though, right?
yeah, high school. I don't know whether we said middle school. Did we say middle and yeah?
I feel like we did. That was in my notes, I'm gonna be honest,
Yeah. So, and my point being, some of these kids, they get up the last minute in the morning, they're rushing off, parents are rushing off to get to work, and, forgot to talk about the schedule of who's getting you to whatever, your practice, or who's picking you up, or what, how you get in a dance class. So I think it's important that, we certainly don't want those kinds of calls going into the office. The office will go crazy.
That's true.
So.
It's not an emergency.
Right, it's not an emergency, but the kid's gotta know who's picking me up, or whatever, or how am I supposed to get there? So I think I was in favor of saying 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the school, at the lunch period would be appropriate for middle and high school kids to, look, Mike's not happy. Oh,
How do you manage that, though?
I know, how do you manage, exactly, how do you manage it, how do you manage any of this, but at least if it's in the policy, that we're trying to accommodate some degree of reality with the use of cell phones. And my third comment is, on the second, if you turn the second page over, turn to page 2 rather, it says during instructional, cell phones and electronic communication devices, during instructional time from the official start of the school time to the end of the day, to the end of day school, what the heck? To the end of the day school dismissal, which includes class periods, electronic devices must be kept powered off and out of sight unless, and then there's ABC. I would like to add one that says, teachers request the phones in sight, because I know some teachers would prefer that the phone be turned off, be off, upside down, on the corner of the desk, so that they can see them. Because out of sight can be,
On your lap.
Right, exactly. So I think it's, well, it says permission is granted.
So
I
if
mean,
you're walking into a class and that teacher's procedure, for lack of a better word, is that your phone is in your upper right-hand corner, like, that is an established procedure that is
Yep.
Established. Sorry,
I mean,
it's been
I'm
a
fine
long
with
day.
it if we all agree that A covers it. If A covers it, I'm fine with it. But to me, permission is granted by the teacher to put it there.
Right.
That's,
You know me, throughout all of this policy process, less is more for me.
Yep, that's
instead
fine.
of getting
Then as
super
long as we
wordy, I
agree
feel like that
can
kind of
mean
covers
the teacher has
it in A.
has the authority to say, I want your phones in the corner of your desk, or wherever they want them. Okay, that's good. That was all I had to say.
Ms. Purcell?
When I was on the innovation team, I went to a few schools and looked if they were already having these things going on and kind of see what they had going. And I do remember a couple schools definitely said passing was a real problem, that kids weren't getting to school on time. As it is, I'm in class on time, as it is, passing is an issue already in our schools. So especially Lyman Hall, I know it was really crowded, a couple hallways. So they felt that they ended up stopping passing. And then at lunch, what one school did was near the end of the lunch, you were allowed to text or look at your phone, but if you were going to have a conversation, they actually had a little space next to it, like maybe Sheen would have the senior court. And if you had to talk on the phone, you went into that space so that other people could still have their conversations and do whatever else they wanted. I don't know if that's something that we could even look up, but it was just another idea.
Yes, Mr. Votto?
You know, Dr. Menzo, I heard your words, and I understand it's very hard to monitor this, but I could give you a list of many other things that are hard to monitor in the cafeteria, in the hallways.
Oh, and I'm not saying because it's difficult to monitor, you don't have a policy.
No, I
I'm
know-
just saying is that you're gonna handcuff, you could potentially handcuff your administrators if you make this so restrictive. And then you're gonna have, you could end up putting in a situation where they catch one student, but they don't catch another, and then they spend the whole rest of their week having to defend the decision of one student rather than another.
Well, I think that happens now, even without cell phones. It can happen when somebody curses at another kid. They hear one,
It
but they
could.
might not hear the another three that have
It
done
could,
it.
but again, I think you just have to be cautious, because what do we want to, not that I'm not saying this isn't important, so again, I'm clearly trying to say that this is an important topic, but we also want to make sure that we're utilizing our administrators' time on instruction, and not necessarily on this, unless we're going, to change that philosophy. So I
How many
understand.
How many people are on duty in a middle school lunch?
Well, we have,
Two
we have
aides?
aides, we don't have teachers, because it's
Right.
not, but they can't do that. So we have between 3 to 4 aides, and then the administrator.
Right. So that could be up to 5 people. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's enough people to monitor it, but that's what I think. But let me ask this question. Are children allowed to use their Chromebooks in the cafeteria for lunch? Do they have their Chromebooks on them?
Some do, because if they have class immediately after lunch, that they don't have time to go back to their lockers before going. That falls under a bit of a different situation, because those are school-owned, they're school-owned devices. I cannot speak tonight. So those are under our purview in terms of whether or not. I know one of the middle schools at least lets them have
As we were talking about this, I was wondering about that, because you can do many things on a Chromebook that you can do on a phone. And I know I know that children do bring their Chromebooks to the cafeteria during lunchtime.
Yeah, but do they use them?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think, Mr. Votto, I think to your point, I think the cafeteria is one thing, but then when you start talking, it just, again, it's a little bit more controlled than you would have, other unstructured settings of the day. So I think, I can understand what you're saying in the cafeteria. I just think it's challenging when you start
Other places?
really parsing this out.
In other places, you're saying?
Yeah, if you start, and I guess middle school is a little bit different than high school.
Yes,
Because
I agree.
high school is just a whole different entity. So at the middle school level, again, I could see the cafeteria as a potential opportunity. However, I think that you're still going to have your challenges totally doing 100% on it. So I wouldn't want to, if the board, and I'm open, and I think we're all open to having conversation about if the board wants to change that wording for middle school. I just don't want to set an expectation that, and I don't think I'm hearing that from you anyway, is that we're not going to miss 1 or 2 here or there, because it's going to be the child who has the lunch, and then they're going to be hiding behind it, and then we're going to find out, down the road that somebody had their phone out during the day. But I think it's very different than the high school. I think you have a different, and
Yeah,
I
I
think
do
you see
too.
that there's a huge differentiation.
But I also think it's the way it's presented. If the rules are clearly stated to all students at the beginning of the year and the parents, and if you have the 5 people that are on, 4 or 5 people that are on duty in the cafeteria are also made aware of what has to happen, what the consequences are. I mean, I think if you show right from the beginning that you're tough about this, you might get a little more cooperation. Will it wane eventually? It might, but everybody's got to stay on their toes. I mean, I agree, it's going to be hard to monitor, but I think the hard to monitor, to me, is worth the price of having children talk to each other and not sit there on that phone. Some kids aren't even eating their lunches, because they're too busy on that phone. And I also think it opens up the possibility of kids cyberbullying, writing about other kids. Kids are kids.
Yeah.
Especially middle school, and nothing, I love middle school, don't get me wrong, I love middle school kids. But the point is, it's very easy to say, hey, you know what, so-and-so just did this in the other room with the other kid, da-da-da. I mean, it happens. And why, and then what ends up happening is the principal or vice principal has to deal with that issue, and that could take just as long or longer than just to tell a kid, put the phone away. So, it's almost like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But I think we need to at least try something.
Ms. Raccio and then Mr. Reynolds.
Okay, a couple things. We did have a parent come to PTAC this year who was concerned about having Chromebooks in the middle school cafeterias. Specifically, he elaborated on the fact that he had chosen not to have his child have a phone, but then through school had a Chromebook, and they used the Chromebook during all the lunch periods. So that's something that we could at least consider. As far as, I know there's an accommodation in here for people who might have 504s or IEPs. I've done a lot of research on assistive technology for students who have the need to have assistive technology. And one of the things that I've seen come up multiple times is a technology etiquette for students. And I think that regardless of what we put in the policy, I think that's just critical. I think that's a document that both parents and students should look at. When is it appropriate to pick up a phone? When is it not appropriate? Whether it's on or off, whether it's passing or not passing, whether it's in the lunch, on the bus, there still should be that etiquette that we need to start. That's part of executive functioning. That's part of communication and life skills that we should be building up in the students so that they're more prepared at the end of their time with us. So I think that there's an opportunity for that.
Great.
As a mom with a teenager, I think if we lock this down too much, there's gonna be a lot of phone calls or a lot of text messaging or a lot more bathroom passes. And we already have issues of what's going on in the bathroom. Now we're gonna have cell phone usage in the bathroom. So I think that's another area. As far as the elementary schools, right now, if a bus driver, at my elementary school, if a bus driver sees an electronic device, they're doing bus conduct reports. And is that really what we want our bus drivers looking for? So if you're gonna put your earbuds in and you're not gonna bother anybody, it might be better for you to sit in the seat and have your earbuds in than try to sneak it out and do it where the bus driver doesn't see you. But I do also worry about, and it's explicit in here, that it's on the parents. There's no, a lot of the elementary schools don't have lockers. So to put this in a secure location and for the student to take it out of their pocket and leave it somewhere, it's on a coat rack in some cases, or in a backpack, or if there is a locker, it's not a locked locker. So, that's a change. And then Mrs. McKay, to your point about this being a first read, we really need to make sure that everybody understands this is a work in progress.
Yep.
Because this has already been posted on the Record Journal website. So there's already a lot of angst going about that. And there's multiple more reads. This is a draft. This is a work in progress. It doesn't change what happens in school tomorrow.
Correct.
So those are my thoughts for tonight.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, couple of things. The majority of the parents I've talked to or have approached me, their main concern is that their children are using electronic cell phones or games, right, too much. And that's one of the reasons why I'm against, the use of it in lunch. And like Mr. Votto said, you want students first to eat, but you also want them to actually communicate with their fellow students. Another thing is, I've seen a few reports on the news that there's recent research is showing that some of these apps have purposely been developed to stimulate part of your brain that makes it, it's addictive. And I just think that, we could, the emergency area is obviously, you know, a serious, you know, thing that, you know, we should discuss further, but cafeteria use, you know, at the high school, middle school, and as I mentioned before, also passing time. I can't buy into it.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, just a couple of things. A couple of years ago, I was at a track meet down in the Haven indoor, and during a break in the action, the kids sit out around this big round table. And I'm sitting next to my granddaughter. She's going to kill me if she hears this. And she's texting away. And I'm looking, and I have a funny feeling. I said, who are you talking to? She's talking to the girl on the other side of the table, texting. And it's common. The other thing I have a question about is I see some kids are now wearing Apple Watches. What are we going to do about that? I mean, the Apple Watch is as bad as a cell phone. We're going to make them take their watch off?
No, because I think with an Apple Watch, you, don't have to, you know, your phone may, or your watch may buzz when you get a phone call, but you don't have to answer it. It doesn't make, or at least mine doesn't make noise or otherwise. I mean, it is just your watch. So, you know, you can't, we're not going to make a kid take their watch off as they go into class.
I agree, but it's
Right.
at the point, because he can text on his watch.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
really,
he
I'm
can
going to say,
send
it's
text
kind of
messages.
hard to do.
Part of it be shut off, I don't know.
Well, the thing is, they have to be close enough to the phone, the proximity of
right?
the phone.
Okay.
So the watch will only work as close as the phone is, because there has to be that proximity feature. So you can't have your phone, Carrie can't have her phone at home, and the watch won't work.
Actually, yes, it does.
It does still?
Yeah.
That far?
So I'll go out for my run or my walk, and it'll
Wow.
GPS and all
See,
of
I
that.
gave up wearing mine because it was too stressful.
But Carrie, can you shut it off and still have a clock?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Can you shut off
A
the,
watch.
can you shut off the cell phone
Yeah,
part
you
of the watch?
unpair it. You unpair it, or you. But
Is
you
it
don't want
easy
it.
to turn
but
off and turn on?
No.
No. You have to pair it again?
Well, you'd have to put your watch in airplane mode, maybe,
Right.
if you did that. I
No.
think that, you know, obviously
It's
this is.
easy enough to ignore as well.
Yeah.
You know, in texting on your watch is not as easy
No, I wouldn't
as texting on your phone.
It's small.
I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
So, I mean, and plus, like, if I were to respond back to a text, I'm gonna have, I can either speak to
Oh,
it
okay.
and it'll type for me, or it's hard to do. So that gets to be very noticeable if a student's trying to do that in the middle of algebra. So,
One more thing. I also think, I agree that philosophically we should come out with a policy. And, but to the parents who are concerned that their kids aren't eating lunch because they're on their phones, or they're not talking to their peers because they're on their phones, there are many ways we can stop that. Take the phone away, one, because now, as a school system, now we're trying to do the job of parents. Take the phone away, or there are apps that I could put on my phone that restricts my child's usage. They can't use it between the hours of 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. And that solves it. And, you know, if parents are truly, really concerned about that, take it away. Yes, Ms. McKay?
Yeah, I thank you for that, Aaron. I just have, I guess, next steps. I mean, a lot of stuff's kind of been bantered and an important conversation, obviously. I guess I'm looking for you, I'm trying to set the stage for you, Carrie, like, or for all you guys that were on the committee.
So I think at this point, I know, and I think it's very important to identify the instructional school day and off and all of that, and that's easy enough to put in. But I do need some guidance, maybe in
Yeah.
the form of consensus, about the lunch
Thank you.
piece and the passing time piece.
Yeah.
You know, as
that's
I
what I was
said, this is the first read. This really isn't much different than our current ancient policy that we have.
Right.
The only thing that it does do is it kind of differentiates the levels, elementary and otherwise.
Which I do like that, and
I do too.
I think based on board conversation, I don't think anybody feels bad about, I think everybody likes
Right.
that differentiation, but
Right.
I just want to move it along in terms of, for you.
I think the main point is lunch and passing time, because then I can make those changes And
Yep.
again, you
And
know,
then
people
we-
will
and then
hear
again, we've
this,
got
and
a-
then by the second read, it'll be
Right.
cleaned up, and then you can determine kind of.
Does it work for us or it
Right.
doesn't work
Should
for
we
us?
differentiate, when we take that consensus, should we differentiate between middle school and high school?
What-
Or do we
Yes.
do?
Well, yeah, middle school, high school, and also, one might feel one way, a board member might feel one way about lunch and may feel one way about passing in the hall.
That needs to be
So
separate.
I hate to make it into that many layers, but
Well, why don't you start with first, just with the clerical changes about the school day and the on and off thing. What is consensus on the policy as the way it is written? Like you would do with any
for
emotion?
what? For just
For
in
the
its
way it's written
totality?
tonight.
For
Yeah.
its totality.
For
Well,
totality,
But
see
I
if there's-
guess if you want some revisions to
Yeah,
it,
but I'm
Sal,
gonna go next steps. So first step is, does this have consensus? I'm gathering no, right?
So let's do
Okay,
consensus.
so we're, no, but I'm just saying, then the next step is now going to what Roxanne was saying. I was just making sure that we're all consent, that there was not five people who liked it this way.
exactly this way. Okay, we
Exactly.
all know there's
So
gonna be
there's
some
not-
revision. Okay.
Okay, so there's definitely five people, there's nobody who likes it exactly this way. So now, breaking it down, starting with, if we kept the high school where it says middle school and high school, if that only said high school, the way it's written here, not middle school.
But it's passing and lunch?
Well, I'm gonna leave it just, we're gonna break it down, so
All right.
piece by piece. So how many people, is there any discussion about if this was not written as middle school and high school, but just high school students? High school students may possess cell phones, wireless communications.
I don't understand what you.
I'm just trying to get, because it sounds like we're trying to separate, we're gonna have an elementary, we're gonna have a middle school and high school. That's why I think we're gonna end up.
So why can't we just say that right from the beginning?
Well, I'm trying to define what you want at the high school, and then I was gonna go to the middle, because I think the high school is easier for you to define.
Really, I think the middle school is easier to do, what I'm hearing from
That's
this
why we have so
group.
much trouble
No,
with
I
it.
do.
All right, so does
feel-
somebody have a proposal for the
Well,
middle school then?
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong,
need a
but,
ballot.
but I kind of feel like, where there's way more shades of gray, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, are for high school, that there's some board members that are more willing to have shades of gray for high school, where middle school, I think they want a more rigid approach. And so,
More black and white.
right.
So I think
So-
I heard, like, from all of you, middle school and high school, the passing time was a no-go.
Is that general?
I think that's what I heard.
Is that agreement? General
Do you want
passing
to just
time,
do
no
a quick
go?
consensus?
quick
Well,
consensus.
Aaron,
Do you want to do?
I
your
agree
meeting.
with the middle school. I don't agree with the high school.
Okay.
I would be in line with
Let's
that.
do,
Okay.
Okay,
let's do
so
middle
let's
school.
just,
Yeah,
that's what I was.
that's what I'm
okay.
saying, I think middle
So
school is
start
gonna be easier
Middle
for you.
school, no
Okay.
passing time, consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
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 Okay, middle school lunch, consensus on that?
What about it?
What
Not
about
having them at all?
Not having them at lunch?
Not having them at lunch?
Yeah.
No.
Not having them on at lunch.
Well, they would, yeah, they would be in their lockers, but I think that's what you were saying, is during the day, they're gonna be in their lockers most likely.
No, I want them to be able to use them at lunch.
Karen?
So that would be a no.
I would not want them to be using it at lunch. I'd
So
like them
that's a
to
yes
talk.
for you. I'm
Yeah.
a no, you're a
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Erin.
You're
Well,
right,
you have to
Aaron.
clarify.
A no, yes.
Well, I'm just explaining what I would like, because I think they should have more face-to-face, interpersonal communication.
Okay, so a yes,
yes.
yes.
What did you say?
I said no.
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 Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
All right, so yeses mean that they would not have them at lunch.
Yes. Yes.
So that one by one.
So the yes is one?
No,
Yes.
no,
Yes,
no.
it did.
No, no.
No,
It's
it did
four
win.
no's. It's four no's.
1, 2, 3, 4. It was 4 no's and 5 yeses. So no passing time at the middle school and not at lunch.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
So-
what, so that's easy. We all,
And
we may
that's
not like
just
it,
going
but
into
we
the draft.
accept that.
It's
Yeah,
just going
that's
into
a
the
draft.
draft.
Right.
It's
That's
going
right.
into the
For the
draft. This is not,
second
we are
read.
not making any decisions
No,
tonight. This is
no.
just trying to get another revision of this document.
We'll see. We'll
So
see
now
how
let's
it
go to
goes.
high school. Passing time at the high school. Yes, meaning you don't believe they should have it.
Yes, meaning you don't.
This is passing.
Wow.
Confusing.
All right.
Yeah, no,
Can
can
I
we
ask-
just-
Yes, it
Can I
Yes,
ask-
meaning that they
what
should have it at
Yeah.
passing, no, meaning that they
Can
should.
I ask
All
you,
right, I
Say
like
it
this.
again.
Before
Yes,
we,
meaning they can use it at passing time, no, meaning they cannot.
before we
At the high
do,
school level.
Yes.
before we do that, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
If they wanna, if they're at lunchtime, can they go to senior court and use it?
Okay,
We're
not
not
on
on lunch
lunch
yet,
yet.
Ray. We're
Yeah.
not on lunch, we're at passing
Just
time.
Passing
time.
time.
Only passing time. We didn't get to senior court
Don't
yet.
complicate
So-
things.
Passing time high school, yes.
So Aaron is saying yes.
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 That they can't use it during.
They
the-
can't
Yes.
use it during,
During passing
Passing.
time? No. No.
No.
High school.
no.
I don't care. I'm joking. I'm really joking. You know what? It's so hard. I think probably yes.
No.
All right, so then the high school kids can use it during passing time, in the next draft of the policy.
Yes.
In the next draft.
So it's really important for board members, if you're really strong on your conviction, you need to like politic other board members to explain
we only have
why
one
they need
vote.
to
We have-
change their vote.
We have swing
Just
votes yet.
saying, just
All right,
saying.
now,
And I'm a swing vote, by the way, on this. I can be bought, by the way.
yes
I'm
for
not-
at lunch and no for at lunch. And I guess in terms of Ray's comments about senior court, and there's a similar version at Lyman Hall, I think that would, I don't know the answer to that question because that is kind of the hallway, but that is still lunch. So I think it's the lunch period.
Yes.
So I think we have to look at it as yes during the lunch period, no matter where lunch resides for that child,
agree.
or no during the lunch period, no matter where that child's lunch resides. So, yes?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes, they can have it.
Yeah.
Right, they can have it.
Yes,
Yes,
is that
they
they
can
can
use it during lunch, yes.
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 No.
Yes.
No.
All right, that one's more definitive. That's 6-3.
Yeah.
That they can have it at lunch. So high school students were saying can have it at lunch and can have it at passing time. Middle school students cannot have it at lunch and cannot have it at passing time.
Stressed over this.
That's what we're saying.
In this
frankly, if I'm
draft of
In this
the
draft,
policy. I
elementary
appreciate you
school
saying
and
that.
middle school are aligned.
Are you done?
Yes?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. No.
Oh. Here's another change.
That wasn't for you, Carrie.
Oh, okay.
That was for me, I know.
Some people just love to take charge, you know?
We're gonna start texting Mike.
And so
You know, I want to comment on the passing thing in the high school. We're not going to allow them to use him during class time, okay?
Yeah.
We in agreement with that in the high school?
Yes.
Okay, so they're gonna take their phone out, they're gonna go out into the hallway, they're gonna start talking on their cell phone, they're gonna trip over each other, they're gonna fall into each other, they're gonna fall downstairs, they're gonna get back in the classroom, and you gotta shut them off and put them back on. You're talking about monitoring, is it not gonna be more difficult for a teacher to get these kids settled? And what if they're in the middle of a text and they walk into a classroom? You're gonna say, no, you can't finish that text, put it down. Well, I'm in the middle of doing it, I wanna finish it. So now you have another problem. I just think that's something, I don't know if everybody, I mean, you know, I am speaking from an educator's point of view too. So I don't know.
Remember,
Just thought I'd bring that up.
we didn't vote.
I didn't ask.
Can I speak?
No, I'm just.
Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Or do you want me to text you? Again, I found out from past experience, all right? You allow something in the hallway, it will carry into your classroom. And I'll wager whatever you want. In other words, you allow students to text, or do whatever on their phone, when they're walking down that hallway, they're gonna turn into your classroom and they're gonna keep doing it.
I think it's really a safety feature too.
Yeah, that,
That's why I'm against it.
first and foremost.
Ms. Purcell?
I have two comments. First, the one thing about not being able to do it in passing is that if you give parents, like if they want to contact their kids about when, you know, who's picking them up, whatever, it's before school, it's at lunch or after. If it's during passing, then it's like, could be all day long. That conversation could be
All right,
happening.
I'm changing my vote. You sold me.
The second thing is, I liked what Ms. Raccio said about the etiquette, and I don't know if there's something that we can put together, like some sort of sheet of cell phone etiquette. That we could, I don't know if you can put it on a policy or if we can just teach it in a class or a school, but it's something that we really need to teach students anyway. I totally agree. I mean, I've seen students actually on an interview pull out their phone, you know, and, or when they're working and they're supposed to be helping a customer, and it's just, we need to teach, that's something we need to teach them, just as far as social curriculum.
Good point.
Mr. Ross?
I just got a comment, I'm gonna get clobbered for this, but right now, how many of us have the cell phones on their desk now, and they're turned on now, and have used them tonight?
I do.
I have it, but I have not used it.
Mine's sitting here, but I haven't used it.
But we're adults.
Hmm?
We're adults.
Big-
Yeah, but it just, you know, I understand that, but it's just the thing, mine's sitting here and it's turned on, and I have, not tonight, but I have seen a text message and I have answered it. And it shouldn't be. I should turn it off before I come into the meeting, because nothing's more important than this meeting, and I'm guilty. And now we're asking students who are accustomed to doing this, and it's gonna be a learning experience, and I agree 1,000%, we've gotta do it. But it's gonna have to happen gradually, because a lot of the parents want their kids to be able to communicate. So it's not an easy thing, because it's not easy for us. Good manners determine that we shouldn't be doing texting when we're in the middle of a
Correct.
meeting, and we're doing it. I'm
No,
guilty. and
you're
I've seen
right.
it, you know?
And the same thing, I mean,
Yeah.
like, just that you know, because I just want to make sure I'm transparent. I'm taking notes and sending
Oh.
emails to principals about your questions. So
Yeah.
I'm just telling you,
No.
because I want to know about the lost and found. I'm very curious about that one.
No,
But no,
exactly.
it's true. The devices do distract.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a tough decision here.
It is, and I
And I'm
think
having
part
problems
of
making it.
this, the purpose of this is really for
Should mention
clarity,
how long it was
because what we're discussing in the draft is not much different from what our current policy is. It just defines it and makes it a little bit more consistent, and it separates out the levels.
Yeah.
So in terms of change, in writing, it's not much of a change, but there are, how it's being implemented in the schools currently is very different from class to class. So it just kind of brings everybody back for consistency purposes. And I don't disagree. I think it needs to just be communicated well both to parents, but then at the start of the school year, especially at the high school level where we're talking about a little bit more freedom of use, everybody needs to be on the same page so that the two classes side by side aren't doing two very, very different things.
I agree.
Mr. Votto?
You know, I think one of the biggest issues is gonna be the emergency part of it. And I think if we agree, for instance, that a child can have their cell phone on their self somehow.
What age
In a-
group are we talking about?
Middle and high, I would say. I'm not for sure, but
I'm not
let me
trying to
just, all right, let me just
pin you
finish this. So if we agree, I don't know if we are put this in the policy or not. Let's say we agree that it can be on themselves somewhere as long as it's in the off position. If, God forbid, there was an emergency, like a lockdown, and children were put in their classroom, you're not gonna stop them from getting on their phone and calling their parents. And I think that's the point. I think we have to understand that. We can't say to them, don't put on your phones, don't call your parents. I mean, if you're worried about you saving your life, you're gonna get into a corner and help protect those kids. They're gonna pick out their phones, they're gonna call. We're not gonna stop children in an emergency like that. You can't. But I think we can at least control the learning environment.
Right. And I think in
And the
both
safety,
places, it
other
speaks
kinds of
to
safety.
a non-visible secure location. It doesn't specify the backpack, it doesn't specify the locker. It specifies a secure location. So if that's the pocket of a child, or that's a locker of a child.
What about on the desk?
It doesn't,
It says
if that's-
non-visible?
It says non-visible, for elementary at least,
Oh.
right now, it says non-visible secure location. So I think for the elementary level, that kind of takes care of my locker's in the hall but not locked, or my cubby is open to anyone, which isn't different now. And then the middle and high, it doesn't actually say anything. So I think that's important to note, for our students. What's most important is that it just doesn't become a disruption to the learning environment. So if you walk into that class and the teacher would rather see it on the corner of the desk, they have permission to do so. If it stays in the back pocket, that's fine. You can tell if a student is, looking under, just like you can tell if an adult is doing that, or your spouse at dinner, or whatever, you know, because their eyes are down. So, you know, it just, we recognize they're present, we recognize that many, many, many of our students have them. It's just about the instructional focus when they enter that classroom. Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, it is, again, as far as you know, with the using the phone, let's say during a lockdown, and I have to go along with Mr. Ross. I had a situation, my previous job, where we didn't have an armed person in the building, but we had them on school grounds. And it can be very, very unnerving. The first and foremost is the silence rule. You have to remain, you know, we get the students away from the windows, have them sing on the floor, but it's silence. Is there any agency, or maybe even the Wallingford Police Department, that we could reach out to and say what would be their recommendation? Because in a situation like this, we're not just talking.
Well, I think the recommendation is obviously that the students aren't supposed to be using the phones.
Yeah.
I think that the challenge is that the teachers have to be able to, in that stressful situation for the teacher as well, need to be able to have the students understand that. We do practice that with the students.
Yeah.
That is part of the practice. That's part of the drill. So it's not a new learning for the students
If they don't use
that they're not to be using cell
That's what I
phones.
said.
They're
You
not.
said what I said then.
So the thing is, so they're told that that's not to be the case. That goes for all of the adults in our organization.
Yeah.
And all of our students. The reality is, though, when you're in an emergency situation, people do sometimes things that they were told not to do, not because they're trying to break the rule, it's because they're nervous, they're anxious, they're all those things. So I think that, yes, we definitely tell our staff, it is communicated to our students, but again, I don't, in the actual situation, which I hope we never, ever, 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 ever have to experience, I don't think we can control that. And again, if a teacher, and I believe in our teachers and our staff members across the district, they're going to do their best to make sure that the students are quiet, if that's what they need to do. Obviously, we also have done the ALICE training where if that's not what we need them to do and we need them to just run, then
That's what they
we
do.
need them to run. So, you know, it's tough, though. I do hear what you're saying, Pat. It's not easy.
No.
Okay, so we're good for another draft.
I just want to say that, I mean, normally, if anybody follows us in the public, when we have a policy change or a new policy, typically, it's like, yeah, the first read, we accept it, and then the second read, we just do it because we have to, and then third read, we actually put it into place. And it's sort of a perfunctory process. But for a first time ever, I think for me personally, this is one of those policies that I think we actually will need all three reads to have a policy that the majority of us feel comfortable with. And, you know, for the first time in my life here, being on the board, I see the value of three reads. And I think that's a really
And
powerful thing.
And to your point, the next read is on June 17th at the regularly scheduled board
Yeah.
meeting. I guess the question I have, and I'm just putting it out there to board members, do you want us to, because I'm sending out weekly updates about the survey, do you want me to put anything about that this policy is under consideration, letting parents be aware of that?
Sure,
If that's
sure.
okay?
So
Absolutely.
when would actually be the third read? If the second read is our televised June 17th, that would be July's televised meeting would be our third read? Because we don't
It
do
could be. It
curriculum
depends on,
or operations in July.
We would never do a third read at operations or instructional anyways.
Okay,
Dependent on the amount of reflection and feedback at the second read.
yep,
The board could then determine, depending on how much
Yeah.
change, to do it either the July
And
meeting, like
my only
normally
caution
scheduled.
with the July meeting is just that if there are parents who still want to come out and speak, it is in the high season of vacation.
so
So
based
the
on
August.
that.
Too.
I
okay,
would
so-
suggest that it would most likely be August, which is August 25th.
So you got, I just want to put that out there. That's
just
not
wanna
our
be
normal.
yeah.
That's fine. That's why I wanted to bring
No,
this up.
no, that's great. I'm glad you are.
I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable that if we do skip a month, why did we skip that month, and, so I just want to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah, no, I
we'll
think it's
probably know
important.
more at the June
That's
meeting.
fine, Carrie, I'm good with that, it's just different from our normal procedure, that's all.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty spirited conversation in a good way.
So what I'll do is, we have scheduled e-blasts to go out every, either Wednesday or Thursday of every week, regarding the survey. But what we'll do is we'll wait until the 13th, because we'll have a revised draft.
Okay.
And just that you're aware, and I just want to make sure you're all clear, because obviously all of this stuff is freedom of information anyway. You can get any of these.
Sure.
What I will do is I'll ask Carrie to assist me in having the link to the latest draft be put into that email to parents so they have access to the latest draft.
And you know what's
If
good
that's
about that
okay.
is if parents feel strongly about something, they have an opportunity to reach out to board members to articulate what their
Correct.
concerns are, and.
So when is when is the next regular board meeting?
The 17th of June.
17th of June. I
Do-
heard
do,
July, that's why.
No,
That was my
No, no,
fault.
no.
Sal, do administrators and teachers get a chance to look at that? Because they're the ones who are going to actually be
Yeah, that's a good
having
point.
to
The
implement it.
administrators, yes.
But even teachers, because they're the ones who are going to have to be doing it.
Yeah.
What we could do, the challenge is time, because we have to revise this, and to be honest, this isn't going to get revised by Carrie until after the last day of school, because we have enough on our plate. As we all know, between now, it's only 7 more days, which is short. So unfortunately, I don't believe we'll get it out for the teachers to be able to weigh in at this point. But again, if we do,
It occurred to me. I can have the principals, there are faculty meetings on Wednesday. So what I can do is work on the revisions that we decided upon this evening and get that, at least it may not be pretty, but I can get that to the building principals to share on Wednesday. I have already gotten building admin feedback on this and know where each level stands. We did that before we even went to committee. But then at the very least, before teachers leave for the summer, they'll at least know where the first draft stands,
started
and then the revisions that we made this evening, so that they can provide some additional feedback. And I can share that with
I
you
don't
all.
understand why we're doing that.
Because,
We're the Board of Education, we make the policy.
well, at the very least, it's sharing, so they know where it stands. Just so they know where it is. Again, it's really not much different than our current policy. It just is a little bit more clear, so.
Any other questions? Public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.